All right, everyone, week 11, a really important week, as they all are, of course. And this one, we're going to do something very different. Um, First thing is the lecture this week is going to be about how to, or understanding payment gateway systems, and it'll be focused on WordPress. So what is WordPress? WordPress is a CMS, content management system, that you can load into any website that gives you so much foundation of user login, how to publish content very quickly for typically those users who don't want to develop for themselves, right? So it's a very, and by the way, 30% of the web is WordPress. But really the focus in this lecture is not about WordPress so much as it is for you to understand payment gateway systems. And so let me show you what I mean. So this is the lecture, and it's really because fundamental part of this course is understanding how you handle transactions over the web. And this is also something that's quickly changing. But as of right now, this is the process that we're talking about, the payment system. So when you accept credit cards to do transactions on the web, who are the parties involved that you have to set up with, and how does the funds flow from the credit card of the user into your account? Right. So this is really what this starts to help you understand. And really it's this lecture right here that is the base of it. And I almost decided not to use this, and I just, after looking at it, I'm like, no, I think this is good fundamental information because WordPress is so common. And again, it's more about setting up e-commerce systems, right? So e-commerce, electronic commerce systems. Okay, so that's the lecture. And then you guys gave me some great feedback about Project Zero. Everything I read, I had planned on doing, giving more detail as far as the points. I think the confusing thing, this part, because we haven't gone to there yet, but was the idea of these categories, right? And I'm going to say 3 to 5 categories, and really those become your menu. And you will see this as we move later into the Bootstrap, how to build Bootstrap site, and it's pretty straightforward. I think you all will enjoy it. So, but really think about this. Those 4 to 5 categories that will then be organizing those 25 topics that you select out of the course can be anything. They could be centered around internet, could be centered around HTML, it could be centered around purchasing. They could be centered around, CEO. They could also be centered around what I liked, what I didn't like, what I would have changed, right? So the idea is for you to get creative and come up with these different ways of organizing. Now, don't worry, as we move closer, when we get closer, and probably about the last 5 weeks of the semester, right, which we're not that far away from, by the way, then many of our exercises will focus on the what you need to work on this. I'll give you like little baby projects, little mini projects to get you started. So don't worry, you'll have time to do that. So this week is again another step for you to take, and another option that you will have for doing hosting. As part of my past job before I started doing this, I was part owner of a hosting company, and they still give me access to the server. So what I've done is I've set up 16 accounts for us, the course, to use. And so what I'm going to do is walk you through, because they're in the hands-on and the current topics, we're going to be going through and playing with this server space, because it's a great thing to know how to do, and B, it leads us towards Project Zero. But really it's more foundational to being on the web and understanding how to use this. So think about this, is that most websites are not just one website, one web server. And I know this has been talked about in the Linda lectures. It's many websites, one server. And then there's something, and they haven't really talked about this, but that manages all these different users that get into the server to manage their specific domains. So you each will have, and I say domain here, it's really just a URL that's a subdomain, part of the server's domain, and you'll see this as we get closer. So I'm going to go through both the hands-on and the current topics. Okay, so that's the lecture with the WordPress, funny. So now let's talk about the server, okay? So do the hands-on first this week. Last week I reversed it, all right? So when you come in here, the other accounts will be listed. I'm not going to list them during the video because I don't really want to publish that information out to the web, and the password will be different as well. But I'm doing this to really walk you through what you need to do. So in this process, we'll get kind of interesting, but the idea is that I want the first student that comes through. So let me say this to you. The first student that comes and that's ready to do the work, do a quick reply telling us which account you've selected. It'll be like S1, S2, S3, all the way down to S15. Okay? So that way we know, like the next student coming in, they'll pick the next one down, S2, right? So and that way we just move through the list. Right, and if you run into any problems, don't pick another one. Just contact me, reach out to chat or whatever, in case when I was cutting and pasting, something happened. But I tested a couple and they seemed okay. All right, so here's the login. So this is the login that will get you. So Plask is the software that controls the different domains on this server, right? So the username in this case, S16, right? Again, this will be unique for you, the one you select, right? And then it will be the password, right? So again, this is not the one that you will use. You will select one, starting at 1, going all the way to 15, doing them in order, okay? So now you log in. So this password and username is also the FTP password and username. So what I've done is there's actually this one account does both the login to the control panel and the FTP, which we will do the FTP for the current topics. So let's handle this one first. Okay, so first you log in, telling everyone that's the one you're going to use. Now when you log in, this will be what you see. Okay, so this will be what I've set up the domain to be. Now this is actually not a working domain, and what they do is they allow us to do the preview, right? So if I click in here, this is actually the HTML, the index.html file that is hosted from this server space, right? So this is the last one, the 16th one. Yours will be whichever one you select, okay? So that's the first part. So the two places that you'll want to change this, and let me show you. So when you log in, you go down. So we'll first change the FTP. So you click here, and when you come in, it'll look like that. You click Show More. You click on FTP, and under FTP, you'll see the account. And this server has a really cool thing, right? And what it does is it generates the password. And I'm not going to do this, but you can hit Show. And this will be, and I recommend you save this somewhere so you have it locally, okay? And when you hit show, and by the way, notice what it does, and this is good. It creates a strong password, okay? So what you're doing here is you're changing the FTP, right? And we're going to do and by the way, I'm going to change it again, so I'm going to go ahead and copy this, okay? So I have it now. That's good. So that's the FTP. So the other thing I want you to change, right? So it still looks like it's doing it. It's taken it a minute here. Is now that I've done the FTP, I want you to come up to the top and you're going to click on, because there's two things here, the subscription, which is the domain, and then there's a login as. And when you come down here, right, I want you to use that same password here. Now again, I'm going to change this, right? That way your FTP and your control panel is the same and it doesn't get confusing. If you want to make them different, that's up to you. I'm not going to but whatever you do, make sure they're strong passwords. Really important, okay? So I'll go ahead and hit OK here. Oh, by the way, I'm going to change this again as soon as I'm done with the video. All right? So that's the first part. Just get in, do that. Now, what's kind of cool here, if you go to Files, and you can see that there's a couple of directories. We're going to see this again in a minute when we do FTP. HTTP docs is where it's hosting, right? So when I went into that server preview URL, this is where that's hosted out of. And if I go into index, right, this is the HTML. By the way, really, really ugly old HTML, right? We could easily get rid of all this, right? We could easily just do the parts that we want to do. So I'm not going to do a lot here, but I'm going to do at least change the title. By the way, I may come up here. Let me make sure I'm on the right page. Let's see. Why is it not letting me? Oh, look, you have different edit options. Oh, that's interesting. Let me pause real quick. Okay, so what I did is I just clicked. Let me go ahead and show you this again. So what I did is when I came in here, I went ahead to the bottom, scrolled to the bottom. I'm going to hit edit in a text editor. And now I'm just going to get rid of everything within the body, right? I'm going to get rid of everything all the way down to the end, before the end of body, right? Boom. And I'm just going to put, and you can get rid of the others to H1. Hello world. Rio here. You can put more content if you want. We will do a little more content later, right? And we'll just hit save here. Cool. So that saved it, right? So now we can go back to that same thing. And this is the way, right? So preview that URL. Good, right? So maybe, we'll do a little more later, but for now, this is all you would need. I'm going to copy this. This is your server URL, and then you come back in here, you'll hit reply, right? You'll update, like I said, the index, and I just showed you how. And then on your reply, you will just give us your 150 words about the experience and a link to your new index.html. Okay? All right, so that's the server space. Now, for the current topics, what I want you to do is the FTP software file transfer protocol, right? So file transfer protocol is a way that we move web pages from local to the host. So there are many ways to do it these days, and there are many different ways to create websites these days. This is kind of, in one sense, the old-fashioned way where we create files and folders, but it's still very used. You will see it, trust me, in your life. You will see what we're about to show you as far as the way this is set up. But I want you to select, if some of you may already have, based on your experience, a preference for FTP software. I used to use something called FileZilla. FileZilla caused some problems for me last semester when I was teaching this class, so I'm switching. And I'm switching to something called CyberDuck. Okay, so I know, right? Funny name. So CyberDuck has and you can search for CyberDuck. I'll give you a link here. It has both a Windows and a Mac client, which I think is cool. So if you don't already use something, this is, I think, a good place to start. And there are other free softwares out there as well. So let me just show you what you have to do here. I was already playing earlier. Let me just hit cancel, right? So once you install the software, so for Mac and for PC, it has both versions. And then you can just do open a connection. You can call it, now in this case, the server could be the domain that you have, okay? And in this case, it's not anonymous. Okay, and for me, right, there's my username, and then the password will be whatever I change that password to. Okay, so I'm actually going to have to pause real quick because I remembered I forgot to change something. But in general, these are the things you knew. So before I pause, the server name, the server, the username, and whatever you changed your FTP password to. Okay. Okay, so then that's the password I changed my FTP to. Now don't confuse this with the control panel one, and this is part of why I say make them the same, just because it's easier. So now up here, make sure you select, I don't know why it defaults to web dev. It could be because of the way the server address is. Okay, and then all you have to do is connect. And once you connect, you'll get this unsecure FTP. I think there is a secure, but for now this will work. And then if this works, then you have and this should look familiar because it's the same thing we were looking at when we were looking at the server space. And there is the HTTP, and there is the index.html. And by the way, when I double click there, I'm going to hit continue here. What it did is it brought the file down to me locally. Okay, I think there's probably a way. Let me see if there's a way. Can I do a quick look? Info, edit with. Okay, so I can actually tell it what I want it to edit with if I wanted to do that. But this is what we will spend a little time in the coming weeks, at least probably next week, looking at ways you can transfer files FTP from local to host. So that will probably be next week's hands-on experience, okay? So just to be clear, you need to select which of the 1 to 15 server spaces you will use. You will need to log on, change your username for FTP, which I showed you how to do that. Change not the username, change the password. Make it a secure password. I showed you how to do that. Also do the same thing for the logon, right? And again, you can use, if you copy and paste the one you generate, you can use the same one. Then I've shown you how, and I've shown you CyberDuck that I'm going to use for FTP because I didn't like FileZilla. If you have one you want to use, that's great. Typical settings you need for all FTP is the username, the host, which is the host name, the host, the username, and the password. And when you have those three things, like you saw in my CyberDuck, right? So when I opened up my connection, the server, the username and the password. Those are the things that you need in order to connect through FTP, and make sure you change that. Okay, so what you need to do is take a print screen. Okay, so let me just get out of this and show you. So now that you've connected, you take a print screen of this, just this screen right here, not the screen I have behind here, just the print screen that you connected successfully. That's really, you have to install the software and connect, and then you'll share that in your in the module for the FTP software, right? And if you do select something besides CyberDuck, just tell us what software you're going to use. I'm totally okay with students using something if they're more familiar with it. Also write your 150 words and do your reply. Doing new stuff this week. I hope you enjoy it. Reach out if you need help. Thanks.